When my son took me to a local pub, the bartender revealed an incredible life-changing secret. Alan stepped into O'Malley's pub with a heart heavy yet hopeful, the smell of beer and fried food wrapping around him like a warm blanket. It was his birthday, but he felt like a ghost in his own life, an invisibility creeping in from years away from the factory grind. The laughter bubbled up, pulling him back to a time when his worth was defined by the sweat on his brow, not the stillness of his now retired days. His son Jason walked beside him, grinning like a summer day. "Come on, Dad. Let us celebrate." Alan felt a beam of pride in his chest. Jason, a genuine reflection of the values his mother instilled in him: hard work, honesty, was the kind of man every father dreamed to raise. Yet even surrounded by family, Alan couldn't shake the weight of feeling unnecessary in a world that ran on productivity. When Bobby, the bartender with a heart that seemed to stretch wider than the bar itself, greeted them, it felt like coming home. "Alan! Jason!" he shouted, his voice cutting through the noise, reverberating with warmth. In a small town like this, they were family. Bobby poured their drinks, the froth spilling over like the affection that filled the room. As they settled into the rhythm of O'Malley's, Alan couldn't help but share his struggles, his voice wavering like a tightrope walker. "You know, Bobby, I feel lost sometimes. What do I even do now?" The words hung between them, heavy and honest. Bobby paused, his gaze penetrating like he could see the storm of insecurities swirling inside Alan. "You're more than your job, Alan," Bobby murmured, his voice steady, yet laced with understanding. "I had someone believe in me when I was down. Maybe it's time you see that potential in yourself." A flicker of hope ignited in Alan's heart. His mind raced, reflecting on the years gone by, full of regret and worries about time lost, and then Bobby dropped the bombshell. "Look, Alan, what if you helped revitalize this community? That initiative you once thought about, you still have it in you." A mixture of excitement and fear surged through Alan, pulling him taut. The thought of stepping outside his boundaries, away from the predictable life he had clung to, felt both liberating and terrifying. Jason observed the shift in his father's demeanor, the flicker of something deep within him. The air crackled with a potent mix of emotions. They spoke, laughter and tears nudging at the edges. They talked about forgiveness, not just for others, but for themselves, and Alan's chest tightened with past burdens he had never truly let go of. Alan felt on the brink of something monumental, a jagged rock of fear bumping against the tidal wave of hope. Was this moment a chance, a gift he didn't know he needed? The atmosphere grew thick, their conversation dancing between dreams and hesitations. "Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen." Now let's continue. As the clinking of glasses provided a backdrop to their emotional discourse, Alan's heart raced with uncharted possibilities, torn between the loyalty to his past and the allure of a future that shimmered just beyond his reach. The pub buzzed with life, yet he felt a chasm of uncertainty widening beneath him. Could he let go of the safety nets that had defined him for so long? As the night deepened, Alan remained suspended, wondering if he could embrace this unexpected opportunity without losing the unwavering bond he shared with Jason. The question lingered, an open canvas waiting for his next stroke. The conversations around them ebbed and flowed like the tide, laughter rising high before settling back down. Alan glanced at Jason, who seemed so full of life, so ready to take on the world. There was a gentle light in his son's eyes, the kind that made Alan's heart ache. Would he ever feel that kind of spark again? Bobby slid another round of drinks toward them, his eyes twinkling with an unspoken challenge. "Alan, what's stopping you? Maybe it's time to ignite that fire." Alan chuckled softly, thinking of how long since he'd felt the warmth of purpose. He felt trapped in a cycle of memories where his significance was measured by the number of hours on the factory floor. What if I fail? Alan forced out, emotions tangling tight in his throat. The question echoed a possession fear seemed to rule his heart. We never know until we try, Bobby replied, leaning in closer. The sincerity in his voice was like a rope thrown to a drowning man. If you don't try, you're already failing yourself. The weight of those words crashed over Alan. Could he truly find a way to make a difference? The idea seemed to swirl around him, inviting but intimidating. Jason was watching, his expression a tapestry of encouragement and concern. Alan marveled again at how strong his son was, yet still felt distant, like a shadow in his own life. Dad, you once told me stories about how you wanted to help this town, Jason encouraged, echoing Bobby's sentiment. Remember when the old community center was falling apart? Look, people still talk about how you rallied everyone to try and fix it. Alan smiled, but it was bittersweet. Those were great days, filled with camaraderie and connection. He had believed in something bigger than himself back then. Where had that man gone? The thought was suddenly tangible, like a flickering ember trying to catch fire again. Would rekindling the old hope unlock a new chapter? Alan weighed this against the silence of his current existence, and suddenly the pub felt both stifling and electric. What do you think I should do? He asked, addressing both Bobby and Jason. His voice trembled, not from fear but from the surge of possibility. Start small, Jason suggested, leaning closer. Maybe organize a weekly cleanup. Or a community potluck. Just connect with people again. Alan pondered the words, visualizing faces lighting up, people bonding over shared food and laughter instead of isolation. But with each vision came doubts. What if no one showed up? What if they didn't care? The questions pressed against his chest, squeezing tight. Maybe it was easier to stay where he was, to avoid the risk of disappointment. How do I even begin? He finally replied, his voice a whisper. Just take the first step, Bobby stated, his tone brokering no argument. Get out there and knock on doors. Let them know you're ready to stand with them. Alan looked down at his glass, the amber liquid swirling like the hope brewing in his heart. It was a challenge, but it felt like the first soft light of dawn breaking over the horizon. A promise of warmth would follow. Let us do it, Dad. Jason's enthusiasm was infectious, his eyes gleaming with shared ambition. Could it be that simple? Alan had spent too long mired in the past. Now, standing on the brink of a new venture, he saw a faint outline of courage spiraling in the distance. But as the laughter and chatter of the pub swirled around him, one daunting question struck like a bell: would the community even want him back? As they raised their glasses for a toast, Alan's heart was a mix of anticipation and trepidation. He was teetering on the edge of stepping into a renewal. With a breath, he accepted the challenge, feeling the pulse of something alive surging through him. The next day, he would face the town again, but could he find the courage to confront both the community and himself, rediscovering the spark that once defined him? As the night faded into laughter and clinking glasses, Alan's heart thudded with rhythm. Could the echoes of long-lost purpose still resonate within him? The sun peeked through the curtains, casting a warm golden glow across the kitchen. Alan sat at the table, a steaming cup of coffee cradled in his hands. The aroma filled the air, mingling with the promise of a new day. Today was the day he would step out, but the weight of uncertainty hung around him like morning fog. Jason bustled through the front door, fresh from his morning run, his cheeks flushed and filled with energy. Dad! Today's the day. Are you ready? He exclaimed, his enthusiasm bubbling over. The sight made Alan smile, a small flicker of excitement igniting within him. Ready as I'll ever be, Alan replied, trying to sound more confident than he felt. He set down the coffee and took a deep breath, the enormity of what lay ahead squeezing at his chest. He had planned to visit the community center, the heart of the town, and see if he could spark some interest in a cleanup initiative, or perhaps a potluck gathering. Just think of all the faces you'll see again, Jason encouraged, leaning against the counter. You're going to do great. Yeah, but what if they don't want my help? What if they think I've been gone too long? Alan's voice trembled slightly, laced with doubt. Then you prove them wrong. Jason shot back, his determination unwavering. You have a lot to offer. You just need to show them. Alan nodded, absorbing the encouragement like a lifeline. The community had once been vibrant, alive with laughter and shared joys. He wanted to breathe that life back into it. With a final glance in the mirror, he decided today wasn't going to be about the man who slipped away, but rather the man who was ready to reclaim his voice. As he and Jason headed out, Alan felt his heart quicken. The crisp air, filled with the smell of autumn leaves, sparked a rhythm of hope and anxiety intertwined. They walked side by side, each step louder in his mind, each moment a countdown to the unknown. When they arrived at the community center, it stood as it always had, a familiar beacon of memories. The paint was peeling, and the grass around it looked wild, as if it hadn't felt the hand of a caretaker in ages. Alan swallowed hard. This was the place where he once rallied every neighbor, the scene of laughter, heart, and connection. Let us go in, Jason urged, nudging him gently. Inside, it was quieter than he remembered. The walls were bare, missing the artwork and posters that once celebrated town events. He felt a pang of nostalgia, a longing for the vibrancy that seemed to have dimmed. Alan approached the bulletin board, now ghostly with remnants of old flyers. He took a moment, letting the memories wash over him. The silence was palpable until a friendly voice broke through. Hey there. Long time no see. It was Margaret, an older woman who had helped with countless community events. Her eyes lit up as she spotted him. Margaret. It's great to see you. Alan replied, his heart swelling with recognition. It's been too long. We've missed you. She stepped closer, her expression a mixture of warmth and curiosity. What brings you back here? Alan hesitated, suddenly aware of the significance of this moment. I want to help bring back some life to this place. Maybe start with some community events. Margaret's face brightened. Oh, that sounds wonderful. We could use some new ideas around here. He felt the weight of her words lift a little of the burden he carried for so long. Maybe there was hope after all. As they spoke, more familiar faces began to drift in, drawn by the sound of laughter and chatter. Alan felt an unexpected surge of excitement. Slowly, they began rallying around him, discussing ideas, sharing thoughts, and rekindling connections long since forgotten. What he feared would be a daunting confrontation turned into an exhilarating reunion, each voice adding to the spark that had long remained dormant within him. But as they huddled together, an unsettling thought lingered at the back of his mind. Could this be a fleeting moment of joy? Or would the flame extinguish once the excitement wore off? Suddenly, Jason's cheerful voice broke through his thoughts. See, Dad? You've still got it. Alan smiled, though doubt remained entwined with his hope. Was this just the beginning, or was he setting himself up for heartbreak? As he stepped back, taking it all in the laughter, the connection, he realized that whatever the outcome, he was ready to embrace this journey, step by step. But just as Alan began to feel more at ease, a shadow fell across the room. A newcomer walked in, a stranger with a determined look, someone who stirred an inexplicable worry in Alan's gut. What did they want? The atmosphere shifted, and uncertainty crept back in. Alan's heart raced once more as he contemplated what would happen next. The door creaked open, pulling every eye in the room towards the stranger. Alan felt the weight of gazes shift, excitement and curiosity hung in the air like the faint scent of coffee mixed with autumn leaves. The newcomer stepped inside, his demeanor confident but unyielding. Can I help you? Margaret's voice rose above the rest, tinged with both caution and warmth. Alan watched her carefully, gauging her reaction as the stranger scanned the room. Just looking for a place to gather, he replied, his tone casual but watchful. Name's Tom. Mind if I join? He walked toward them with purpose, his eyes briefly meeting Alan's. There was something unsettling in that moment, a spark that sent a jolt through Alan's body. As Tom introduced himself to the crowd, Alan felt a rush of mixed emotions. Everyone else seemed open, but Alan found himself slipping into a shell. Jason, on the other hand, brightened up. "We're just planning a few events. You're welcome to join us." Tom shrugged, offering a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "I'm sure you have some great ideas." Margaret, sensing the shift, leaned toward Alan and murmured, Let's not let one stranger ruin our moment. Focus on the good." Her voice was steady, reminding Alan of the warmth that had already begun to fill the space. The buzz of conversation continued, but Alan's focus remained on Tom. Every laugh and idea shared was punctuated by the stranger's intense presence. He was an outsider, yes, but there was more to him, something deeper that made Alan's instincts flare. "What do you think we should start with?" Alan asked, trying to push through the unease. The words came out steadier than he expected. "Restoration of the community garden could be a great beginning," Tom suggested, folding his arms with confidence. "A solid way to bring people together over something tangible." Alan nodded, impressed but still skeptical. "Not to be rude, but what do you know about this community?" Tom paused, his expression shifting slightly. "I've seen a few towns in my time. What matters most is the people." Alan's spine tingled with a mixture of suspicion and intuition. He wanted to dismiss Tom's presence, but the stranger's words resonated deeper than he expected. As the group erupted into discussion, Alan battled between keeping his guard up and letting the stranger in. Among the chatter, ideas for fundraisers and activities began forming. Laughter bubbled over as plans started to solidify, yet the sensation of the unknown lingered close. "Maybe a fall festival." Jason's voice cut through the sway of voices. "We can get everyone excited again." "Brilliant." Margaret chimed in, her enthusiasm adding fuel to the fire. "Count me in." Tom grinned, leaning forward as if he belonged. Alan's gaze darted around the gathering faces, from Jason's bright smile to Margaret's knowing nod. They didn't seem upset by Tom's sudden presence, but Alan couldn't shake the feeling nudging at the edges of his mind. "Okay, let's put this plan into action," he said, rallying the group. But as they discussed dates and details, a gnawing sense of foreboding settled in his heart. Something about this stranger was going to change everything, but how? Suddenly, when it seemed conversation settled on a plan, Tom broke through. "Listen, before we proceed, there is something you all should know." Alan's pulse quickened. The room fell silent, anticipation hanging like a tightrope stretched under heavy weight. Tom pulled in a breath, his expression shifting to something serious. "I've got a secret that could change the direction of this community for good." As those words hung in the air, Alan felt a mix of dread and intrigue. What could this stranger reveal that would turn everything upside down? And how would it intertwine with his own journey of rediscovery? The tension grew thick as no one dared to interrupt. Alan's heart raced, anticipation swirling like a storm within him. Whatever came next would change everything. Tom's gaze swept across the room, locking eyes with each person before settling back on Alan, who felt the intensity of that stare ripple through him. It was as if time paused for a moment, the atmosphere charged with unspoken worries and possibilities. "What I'm about to share could give all of you a fresh start, a chance to reclaim what we all seem to have lost," he began, his voice steady and low. "I've been compiling stories, histories, the threads that bind this community, some of which may not be what they seem." Alan tightened his grip on the table. His heart raced as excitement battled with skepticism. The air felt dense, layered with unfallen rain, and he could sense the same tension in the others around him. "What do you mean?" Margaret asked carefully, leaning forward as curiosity lit her eyes. Tom hesitated for just a beat, then continued. "I've discovered something about this town, something hidden beneath the surface." He cleared his throat, and for a second, Alan could see a flicker of vulnerability in his eyes. "Years ago, there was a community fund set up to help with projects like your garden. It was supposed to revive the neighborhood." But then he paused again, looking around the room as if measuring the impact of his words. "It was abandoned." But there are still resources tied to it, resources people forgot about. I think I can help you access them. Jason jumped in. Are you saying we could actually restore the garden and get more? The glimmer of hope shone in his voice, electrifying the atmosphere. Yes, Tom replied, the hint of a smile creeping onto his lips. But you need to be willing to dig a bit deeper. We can revolutionize this place if we work together and face the truth. The talkative energy shifted in the room. Alan found his own thoughts racing. Could it really be possible? Something within him flickered, an ember of hope igniting deeper questions. Why had this fund been disregarded? What truths did Tom know about the town that remained concealed? What's the catch? Alan asked, his skepticism returning, shaking off the shimmer of optimism. Why share this with us? Tom's expression hardened slightly, reflecting something unyielded. This town has a way of burying its past. I'm not here for personal gain. I want to see people united again, this community thriving. But it requires trust. And that's a bridge we have to cross together. The murmurs of excitement began to rise again, punctuated by disbelief and cautious optimism. Varieties of emotions danced in the room, some faces lightening, while Alan's turmoil only deepened. What secrets lay within those forgotten stories? And why did Tom hold them? Margaret reached for Alan's hand. I think we should hear him out, she said softly. This could be the moment we've all been waiting for. Alan looked around the room, his friends exhibited a mixture of enthusiasm and hope that he couldn't ignore. But shadows loomed in the corners of his mind, whispering uncertainty. Could they trust Tom, a man they barely knew, claiming to hold the key to their future? Before he could voice his concerns, Jason called out, "Let us do it. Let us investigate this fund." Excitement ricocheted through the group, but Alan remained entrenched in thought. He knew something pivotal was about to happen, and it wasn't just about gardens or festivals. It was about every story that went untold and every person who felt disconnected. Alan swallowed hard, torn between playing it safe or diving in headfirst. As laughter spilled around him and plans began to formulate, the exhilaration crashing like waves against his senses, a new thrill mingled with his trepidation. All right, I'll go along with this, he managed to say, though doubt still clung to him like damp leaves. But if we do this, we're diving deep. No holding back. Yes. Tom exclaimed, a flicker of gratitude flashing in his eyes. That's the spirit. And as voices blended in celebration, Alan leaned back, contemplating where this decision might lead. What hidden truths lay within the walls of their community? And how would discovering them shape who they became together? Just then, Alan felt an unexpected rush, a flicker of that old feeling he once knew deep within, the spark of possibility. But would he be able to withstand the truth, whatever it held? As the group burst into animated discussions, Tom's gaze met Alan's again, and Alan couldn't shake the sensation that this was only the beginning of something transformative, or something that could tear them apart. Alan's heart thumped in rhythm with the buzz of chatter. Ideas sparked, plans emerged, and yet, the undercurrent of doubt tugged at him. The thought of unearthing a long-buried fund, of reaching into the depths of the town's past, held a strange mix of promise and peril. Okay, everyone, Tom called, his voice slicing through the momentary chaos. Let us get organized. I can lead a meeting for those interested, maybe this weekend. We can start gathering information about the fund. A chorus of agreement rose, matching the energy in the room. Alan glanced at the smiles spreading across his friends' faces, their hope lifting his spirits just a bit, but too many questions still haunted him. How far back did this go? Margaret leaned over, barely containing her excitement. This feels right, doesn't it? Like we're finally taking a step forward. Yeah, but we're stepping into something we don't fully understand, Alan replied softly. He felt a knot in his stomach as he considered their path. Every journey begins with a leap, right? She said, her sincerity piercing through his doubts. Alan forced a smile, knowing she was right, yet unsure how to voice his conflicting feelings to the group. As the night wore on, Alan threw himself into the conversations, even suggesting ideas for the meeting. But shards of doubt still flickered in the background. At the end of the night, as friends hugged and exchanged goodbyes, Alan lingered, watching Tom gather his things. He approached him cautiously. "Are you sure about this?" he asked, his voice a mix of concern and curiosity. "This town has been stagnant for so long. Can you really unlock it? And what happens if we uncover something dark?" Tom met his gaze steadily. "All I know is that sometimes the past holds answers we desperately need. But it's true, uncovering it might mean facing hard truths. Together." "Together," Alan echoed, feeling the weight of that word as it lingered in the air. As he left the community center, thoughts churned in Alan's mind. He thought not just about gardens and community spirit, but of lost stories and painful histories. If they did this, they had to embrace everything it entailed. Days passed. Plans were laid. The air became rife with anticipation. Yet, a lingering worry kept him awake. What if the fund's history was tied to darker aspects of their town? He needed clarity, a way to prepare himself and his friends for whatever they might uncover. Standing in front of his computer, he hesitated. What should he search for? Community fund? History of the neighborhood? Face set in determination, he typed in the name of the fund. Little did he know, the moment he hit enter would startle him with revelations he never saw coming. Alan's breath caught in his throat. A flood of articles and documents rushed at him, one in particular grabbing his attention, a faded newspaper clipping from decades ago. The headline declared, "Local funds scammed, community left in ruin." Pulse racing and palms sweating, Alan clicked the link. The story revealed Shadow's connections to familiar names in the community, abandoned promises, and betrayal. His heart sank as the implications of it settled like stones in his stomach. What had they gotten themselves into? The next morning, overwhelmed by anticipation and fear, Alan gathered with his friends. The energy buzzed through the group, but he felt like an outsider holding knowledge that could shift their entire mission into chaos. "Alan?" Tom called, noticing his serious demeanor. "Everything all right?" He opened his mouth, ready to spill the secrets he had uncovered, but doubt silenced his tongue. What if sharing this could shatter the hope they built? In that moment, Alan realized the truth: their community's past could reshape their present, and he had to choose whether to reveal what he found or let them embark on this journey untainted by fear. But was ignorance truly bliss, or would the truth offer liberation they didn't even know they were craving? As he wrestled with silence and secrets, he felt the weight of this moment anchoring him. The depths of their investigation loomed ahead, ready to unveil paths they had yet to imagine. Would this be the beginning of healing or the unraveling of everything they thought they knew? With hearts full of hope and uncertainty, they were about to find out. The atmosphere in the small town center buzzed with excitement as Alan and his friends met up to discuss their plans. They gathered around a table at the corner cafe, the kind with mismatched chairs and a faint smell of coffee that felt like home. Alan's heart raced, not just from the caffeine but from the realization that they were staring down a path filled with hope and shadows. As everyone settled, Tom kicked things off, his infectious enthusiasm spilling into every word. "All right, everyone. Let us dive into what we can uncover about the fund. Who knows how it could change everything for us? This is our chance." Alan nodded along, but his smile was tight, his mind still tangled in what he had discovered. Necklace chains made of doubt and worry dangled from his thoughts, and he fought to keep them hidden from his friends. Their eager faces glowed with possibilities, and he didn't want to dampen their spirits. Margaret leaned closer, her voice a whisper of energy. "What do you think we'll find?" "I just hope it's not bad news," Alan replied, his voice barely breaking free. It felt heavy, unconfined, the truth weighing on him like a stone. Tom, oblivious as always, scribbled something on a napkin. "We'll start by dividing up the research. We each take a different angle, some on the fund itself, others on the people involved." His enthusiasm ignited the crowd, and they threw out suggestions like confetti. As they discussed strategies and tasked each other, Alan's eyes drifted to the cafe's window. He caught a glimpse of the familiar streets outside, places brushed with stories and memories, both joyful and painful. What would it take to uncover the full picture of their community's past? Alan. Someone called his name, pulling him back. It was Lisa, an old friend who always brightened the room. "You in? We need your input." He couldn't resist her warmth. "Yeah, of course. I'm here." But even as he spoke, his mind circled back to the newspaper article. What would happen when they confronted the truth? Later, as the cafe began to empty, they held a mini brainstorming session, building the foundations of their investigation. Laughter and chatter filled the space, and Alan's heart yearned to join in. But beneath the surface, a storm was brewing. "You know," Margaret said, "I don't think we can go wrong if we all support each other. We can be the change we want to see." Her words struck a chord. They were strong, a beacon in dark waters. Placing faith in the uncharted territory of their own history felt like a leap, terrifying yet necessary. "Agreed," Tom said, looking directly at Alan. "We trust in each other, no matter how scary it gets." Those words settled into Alan's heart. He wanted to believe that, but just as hope began to bloom, the door swung open, and a figure stepped in. It was Jay, the town's unofficial historian and a man known for cryptic tales about the past. The air shifted as he approached, an aura of seriousness trailing behind him. "Mind if I join?" he asked, his eyes scanning the group with a knowing glint. The room fell silent, curiosity weaving through the friends. "Sure, Jay. We were just discussing the community fund," Tom replied, waving him over. Alan clenched his fists under the table. He'd heard whispers about Jay's insights into the past, tales filled with warnings and secrets. Could he shed light on what lay buried? As Jay began to speak, Alan's pulse quickened, anticipation swirling with anxiety. What would this man reveal? Would it pull them deeper into the depths of anguish or lead them toward healing? "Listen closely," Jay said, leaning in. "The fund is just the tip of the iceberg." Alan felt his heart race as shadows danced on the walls of his mind. The truth was about to unravel in ways they never expected. How much more was at stake than hope and dreams? And as Alan listened, he couldn't help but wonder, was the reality they sought worth the risk of everything they'd built? Jay's voice hung in the air like a single drop of rain before a downpour. Everyone leaned in closer, their excitement tinged with an undercurrent of unease. Alan could feel the tension knitting tightly around them, binding their fates together in that moment. "What do you mean, just the tip of the iceberg?" Alan's voice was steadier than he felt. He needed clarity, and the group seemed to share his sentiment. Jay nodded gravely. "The fund was created for one reason, but its history is woven with threads of isolation, money, and sacrifice. It started with hope, but there were choices. Choices made in the dark." Alan exchanged uneasy glances with Margaret and Tom, the flicker of doubt creeping into their shared optimism. "What kind of choices?" Tom asked, his voice a notch down, as if he already felt the weight of what they might uncover. "Years ago," Jay began, swirling his coffee absent-mindedly, "there was an incident, something that shook this town to its core. The fund was established in the aftermath, but it was built on unspoken pain." His eyes glimmered with knowledge, memories swimming beneath those surface layers. "What incident?" Margaret pressed, her brows furrowing with worry. "You can't just drop that and walk away." Jay sighed, the weight of the past creeping back into him. "It was a mining accident, several families affected. The fund was intended to support them, yes, but it was also a way to hide the truth, to protect the town's reputation." Alan leaned back in his chair, heart hammering in his chest. He recalled the stories whispered among families, deaths that weren't just history, but shadows that still loomed large. Did the families get the help they needed? "Some did, and some didn't," Jay said carefully. "The thing about money is that it can't fix everything. There were conflicts, secrets, betrayals, losses that turned love into bitterness. The cafe around them faded as Alan's mind raced. Each piece of information Jay was sharing felt heavy with responsibility. No longer were they simply looking for opportunities, now they had to navigate the currents of heartache and history. He glanced at his friends, their faces reflecting the same storm of emotions churning within him. What do we do with this information? Lisa finally broke the silence, her voice a soft plea for direction. We find out the truth, he replied, a fire igniting in his heart. Not just for us, but for the families still living with the consequences. We owe it to them. His conviction echoed in the corners of the cafe, and if there was any doubt, it slipped away with those words. But what if the truth is too painful? Margaret questioned softly. What if it tears our community apart? Alan thought about that, his heart heavy with the burden of their mission. Then we face it together. We'd be changing the narrative. Healing starts with understanding. Jay nodded slowly, impressed. You all have the chance to rewrite the story, to bring light to what was hidden. But beware, such truths can be dangerous. An uneasy silence ensued as the implications hung over them like thick fog. Would they want to face the fallout? But as Alan looked around at his friends, he saw determination etched on their faces. They were in this together, just as they had promised. Let us meet tomorrow, Tom said, his voice steadying. We can start mapping our plan. As everyone agreed, Alan felt a flicker of hope, the same warmth that had drawn them together in the first place. But beneath that was a haunting foreboding. What would they discover? The group dispersed, and Alan lingered a moment longer, watching the last of the light fade from the cafe window. The path ahead was unclear, and the danger felt very real, but something told him that uncovering the truth was only the beginning. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Would they be able to face the past together, or would it tear them apart? And as Alan stepped out into the night, a single question clawed at him: was he ready to confront the shadows of their community? As dawn broke the next day, an orange hue spilled across Alan's small apartment. He lay awake, heart drumming wildly as memories of last night flooded back. The conversations, the secrets, and the weight of their mission had settled over him like a heavy blanket. Could he really face what lay ahead? Could they all? He shook off the unease and got ready, his mind racing through everything they had to accomplish. Today would be the day they sought answers, and the air was thick with anticipation. Alan met Margaret and Tom at their usual cafe, the scent of fresh coffee filling the space as they took their seats. The morning crowd bustled around them, oblivious to the gravity of what was about to transpire. Where should we start? Tom asked, sipping on his coffee, his brow knitted in concentration. Let us dig into the history of that mining accident, Alan suggested. We need to know the victims, their families, and how the fund was managed. We could start with local records. Margaret nodded, but concern flickered across her face. It's going to be emotionally charged. These families, their pain is still fresh. What if we accidentally unearth something that hurts them further? Alan felt her words like a tightening vice. It wasn't just about seeking truth, it was about navigating the lives tied to that tragedy. We'll be respectful, he promised, even as doubt wavered in his mind. We owe it to them. The three of them gathered documents, old newspapers, and anything they could find about the accident's aftermath. Hours slipped away as they pieced together a timeline, the names of families rising before them like specters. With each new discovery, Alan's conviction grew stronger. They were onto something that could change everything. Later that afternoon, they decided to visit the local library, searching through archives that smelled of aged paper and untold stories. The librarian, a kind woman named Mrs. Hargrove, offered her assistance, leading them to sections that usually gathered dust. You kids sure about this? She asked as she handed Alan a fragile newspaper clipping. This town we've buried things deep. Some stories are better left untold. Her gaze was serious, filled with concern, and it sent a shiver down Alan's spine. We're just trying to find the truth, he replied, unsure of the reassurance that fell flat in the musty air. After hours of digging, they stumbled across the names of families directly impacted by the mining disaster. A small article detailed the aftermath, mentioning a widow, Mary Collins, who had fought for better safety regulations. She was celebrated, but behind that was a bitter truth he sensed was entwined with sadness. "Let us find her," Alan urged, excitement bubbling beneath his anxiety. "She might have insights we need." Margaret's face fell. What if she's not ready to talk? Or worse, what if she's still angry? "Then we'll listen," Tom said softly. "That's the least we can do." The weight of their mission bore down on them as they exchanged a look of resolve. They each knew they could change everything, but at what cost? "What if we hurt her more?" Margaret whispered, fear rippling through her. Alan felt an ache in his heart. "We will face it together. If we tread lightly, we can honor her story." As they left the library, the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows that mirrored the uncertainty ahead. The path was still murky, but it felt less daunting together. What truths would they unearth? Would Mary Collins welcome them, or would they be met with the anger of a past she'd fought long and hard to forget? As they made their way through the quiet streets towards Mary's last known address, a chilling thought struck Alan. Were they ready for whatever awaited them? They arrived at the modest house on Maple Street, where the white paint had begun to weather, giving it a worn charm. The yard was overgrown but carried traces of love, like remnants of laughter echoing off the walls. With each step towards the door, Alan's heart raced a wild rhythm of anticipation and dread. As Alan reached for the doorbell, he hesitated, glancing at Margaret and Tom, who stood by his side, their expressions a mix of determination and uncertainty. Would Mary be willing to talk about her pain? They prepared for a confrontation with the past but hoped for something more, a chance for healing. The door creaked open, revealing Mary Collins, her face lined with stories yet to be told. Surprised, her eyes widened as they took in the sight of Alan and his friends. "Can I help you?" she asked, her voice steady but edged with caution. "Hi, Mrs. Collins," Alan started, his voice steady despite the tremor in his heart. "I'm Alan, and this is Margaret and Tom. We're here about the community fund that was set up after the accident and your story." Mary's expression shifted, shadows flitting across her face. "My story?" she prompted lightly, drawing back slightly as if bracing for a storm she'd long since weathered. "Yes," Tom stepped in, his tone respectful. "We believe that digging into these stories might help us all heal. We want to provide a voice for those who've been forgotten." Her eyes softened slightly, though they still held a spectrum of untold pain, and she gestured for them to enter. Alan took a deep breath as they stepped inside, the air thick with history, echoing the lives tied to this house. They settled into the worn couches, and after a moment of silence, Alan leaned in. "We know there were many who suffered because of that accident, including your husband. How it affected your family we want to listen, if you're ready to share." Mary glanced toward the window, the setting sun casting a warm glow over the room, illuminating the sadness etched in her features. "You children are brave," she murmured. "Many don't want to revisit those times. My husband was a good man. He believed in safety and community. He fought for better conditions." Her voice cracked slightly, a memory spilling forth. "What happened?" Margaret asked gently, leaning forward, her heart in her throat. "They didn't listen. They rushed the safety protocols, cut corners. He was the one who paid for it." Her words were heavy, laden with loss. "When the accident happened, I lost everything. Our dreams, our future. The fund was supposed to help, but it also buried the truth." Alan's heart ached as he absorbed her story, the depth of her grief resonating with him in ways he couldn't have imagined. "What do you mean?" he asked, needing to understand the weight of those buried truths. "Townsfolk didn't want to face it. Many turned blind eyes so businesses could continue without judgment. The fund covered up the scandal, but anything behind those doors, families torn apart, injustice swept away like dust." Mary paused, anguish stirring in her eyes. My husband's sacrifice barely mentioned, his name lost in disguise. I vowed that one day, the truth would see daylight. Together in that cozy living room, a new understanding formed, connecting them across generations and pain. Each word felt like balm on an old wound. We want to help you, Alan said, his voice steadier now. We want to shine a light on it. Help people know the truth behind what happened. Mary's expression shifted again, this time with a flicker of hope. It won't be easy, she warned. People may resist. Fear of history can chain them. Then we break those chains together, Tom affirmed. With your voice leading, the community can find closure. They can learn from the past. As Mary considered their words, the weight of her isolation slowly lifted. Hope blossomed like spring flowers after a long winter. You children might just be what this town needs, she said softly. In that moment, Alan felt a surge of purpose. He looked at Margaret and Tom, who were silently reaffirming their commitment to see this through. They were embarking on a mission to restore not just a garden but a community, slowly uprooting the cancer of silence. With shared determination pulsing through them, Alan leaned forward again. Would you help us tell your story, Mrs. Collins? We can organize a meeting at the community center. Show people how they can rebuild, step forward, and reclaim this history. Her sigils of grief twinkled with the possibility of revival. I'd be proud to share, she whispered, a tear rolling down her cheek, but I can't do it alone. You're not alone anymore, Alan reassured her, standing up now, heart alight with purpose. We'll face it together. As they departed from Mary's home, Alan felt elated to finally confront the truths they had been avoiding. The drive back felt different, a sense of possibility coursed through him as the weight of the past transformed into something lighter, less burdensome. They were diving headfirst into their community's journey, ready to reveal what lay beneath the surface. Days turned into a successful meeting at the community center where hope surged back into the hearts of the residents. Alan held Mary's hand as she told her story, her voice steady, marking each painful loss and small victory. Familiar faces filled the room, each listening, connected by a shared history once hidden. The weight of history began shedding like an old skin, revealing a vibrant community eager to change. Hope ignited conversations about safety and remembrance, about past lives intertwining yet reborn in powerful solidarity. As Mary spoke, Alan felt waves of encouragement wash over him. Those long-lost dreams, suddenly clearer, took shape in the laughter shared among neighbors, knitting bonds tighter than ever before, and in that moment, among the faces of his community, Alan realized he had rediscovered not only his purpose but also the immeasurable power of connection. They were shining light into the shadows, welcoming their history with open arms, and forging a new path forward together. With renewed strength, Alan smiled wide, heart fuller than it had been in years. The crowd erupted in applause, spirits soaring. His voice broke through with enthusiasm. Let us keep building. Together, we can turn our past into our future. And in that moment, Alan felt more alive and necessary than he ever had before, once a ghost in his own life, now a beacon of hope for his community. As he basked in the glow of renewed connection and purpose, Alan knew that every action they took from this moment forward would shape the community for generations to come. This was the new beginning, and together, they were soaring. Now, as this transformative journey reaches its breathtaking conclusion, I need you to take action. Be part of our community. Subscribe immediately to not miss the next exclusive stories that inspire change. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and show your support for these powerful narratives. Comment your reactions and feelings about how this story resonated with you and if you're ready to confront your own past. And don't wait not even one more second. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who you know need to see this transformation. True fans understand the importance of supporting our channel through these actions. Take a moment and join the movement.